The Steam Deck has been out for a year already. The amount of stuff that can be done on the Steam Deck is truly insane. Valve is going through the game list and has verified over 9,000 games as at least playable. That's not all that it can do, but that will be my starting point. Steam's diverse library ranges from tiny indie games to the latest AAA games. Indies run great in this thing, and most of them run at a consistent 60 frames per second. What genuinely surprised me is how well it runs the more recent, higher intensity games. Games like Spider-Man Remastered, God of War, Psychonauts 2, and Elden Ring, these all ran at mostly a consistent 30 FPS, with dips here and there. The fact that I can take Elden Ring with me whenever I go is just something that I genuinely didn't expect to happen anytime soon. New big releases like Hogwarts Legacy are still being added to the verified games list as well. So while the main focus here is that you can play your Steam games on the go, but that's not all that it can do. I've done my fair share of tinkering with it, and I got non-Steam games to work on here pretty well. There are dozens of tutorial videos on how to install emulators on here, and that is because the Steam Deck does it very well. I personally put Dolphin on this guy so I can play games like Pikmin 1 and 2, Smash Melee, Animal Crossing, and Double Dash portably. I've been hoping for a way to play Pikmin 1 and 2 on the go for a while now. It's funny that Nintendo didn't give this to me. It was Valve. I also recently installed EMU Deck, and I've been playing around with that a bit too. Emulators aren't the only thing though. I've been playing around with getting other launchers on here too. As much as I like Steam, some of my favorite PC games just aren't available on it. The big one is Heroes of Might and Magic 3. I had to jump through all sorts of hoops to make this work, but I was able to download GOG and download Heroes 3. After that, I was able to download the Horn of the Abyss mod. I had to make few compromises to take my favorite game of all time on the go. I prefer it to hauling around a gaming laptop because of this next reason. I actually really like the form factor of this thing. I say it like that because I've heard so many people bitch about it, saying that it's too bulky or too heavy or whatever. I'm only 5'4" because God hates me, but even with my tiny ass hands, the Steam Deck just feels good to play. It's nice to play standard controller games on it, but even point and click games feel pretty good too because of the trackpads. They were better than I was expecting. The only games that I find that this comes up short in are games that require a keyboard. Don't get me wrong, you can hook up a keyboard to this thing, but then you're sacrificing portability at that point. There is also a virtual keyboard, but let's not, okay? The last thing that I'm super positive about is Valve's attitude towards the device. I still game on consoles a decent bit, and I'm so used to the manufacturers making arbitrary limitations. Nintendo in particular is just brutal with this shit, and they insist that you play the games that you paid for in the way that they want you to. With the Steam Deck though, Valve has straight up said, it's your deck, do whatever you want with it. Do you just want to stick with Steam games? Cool. Do you want to download Windows and have it perform like total dog shit? Cool by Valve. Do you want to download other launchers such as Battle.net, Epic, or good old games? That's also fine. Do you want to unload a shit ton of emulators on it? It's just such a breath of fresh air to hear a company come out and say, the possibilities are endless. Instead of, oh, we're going to ban your account because you modded our console to add a single skin to a single game that doesn't affect our bottom line at all. I'm not quite sure whether to list this as a pro or a con, but the storage is lacking right out of the box, especially on cheaper models. The reason why I don't think it's that big of a deal is because micro SD cards will work on the Steam Deck, and these guys get pretty cheap for the amount of storage that they provide, especially during sales. I have the 512GB NVMe SSD, which is the fastest and largest SSD size, but since we're installing full PC games on here, it fills up quickly. I'll okay even buy a micro SD card soon enough, but it is worth mentioning. Some of these games get up to 100GB, man. At least games load quickly with the SSD in here. As much as I like this device, there are a couple things that hold it back for me. The biggest one is probably the battery life. If one is playing less intense games, it can maybe survive like 3 or 4 hours. But the more intensive games, whenever I play Spider-Man Remastered for an example, it would last for only an hour or so. It's easy to sit here and say Valve should have used a bigger battery, but the Steam Deck is a powerful little thing. Cramming this much tech into this machine is probably very demanding. To be fair, there are plenty of options to tinker with, such as resolution and refresh rate, that can make the battery survive just a bit longer. The other big downside, which some will probably laugh at, is the fact that if you want to get the most out of the Steam Deck, you're gonna have to tinker a bit. Getting emulators and non-Steam games on here can be a bit of a hassle. Some are going to argue that this is a portable PC though, and a large portion of the audience is used to tinkering with stuff anyway. If one is a PC gamer, they know what I'm talking about. How many times have you had a window update just completely broke something? How many times have you bought a game and it updated itself and just performed worse than before? How many times have you bought a game and it just didn't work at all? It's worth noting that, because keep in mind, this isn't a console, it's a PC in handheld form. I know that some people just think Steam game equals must work on the deck, and that's just simply not the case. Of course, not every emulator is going to work on here either, not every game is going to work on here. It's just something to note, because you see a lot of people really hype up this device as like a machine that does everything, but let's not get too carried away. It has its limitations. I also got the dock for anyone that cares. I decided to just buy an official one, but if one doesn't need all the little fancy bells and whistles on it, I'd recommend a cheaper one. It's nice to hook up a bad boy to a monitor and connect a mouse and keyboard and go into desktop mode. It feels like a, wait for it, PC. Surfing the web, checking files, and downloading stuff all feels super natural in desktop mode. Even a year later, I'm still playing this guy a decent bit. Digimon World Next Order has been my most recent time sink, but I also installed the EMU deck to play some good old Pokemon Crystal Clear on here. I'm thinking about messing around with Nintendo 64, PS1, and PS2 games as well. The possibilities are truly deep here, and I'll keep using the Steam Deck for years. If I live that long, I mean, I'm not a fortune teller. Physically, the deck is still holding up well. The build quality seems pretty decent on it. No buttons are sticking, no sticks are drifting, the screen looks decent, the speakers still sound fine, and the battery doesn't seem depleted at all yet. It's worth noting because I've bought plenty of devices that have had problems within a year. If we're talking physically, the deck still feels like I bought it on day one. Software-wise, it feels much better because Valve is putting out updates for it pretty regularly. Those are my quick 2 cents on the Steam Deck. It's an exciting little device that'll let me get additional gaming sessions in when I can. I love my Switch for a while, but the lore expects me that it misses out on or gets a sloppier version of third-party games. I used to buy games on Switch keeping the portability in mind, but now it's so nice to buy games on Steam and just get a better portable version. The miracle ports like Witcher 3 and Doom Eternal, those are cool on Switch and all, but I'd rather just play them on Steam Deck. Speaking of the future, I wonder how long it'll stay competitive though. It wasn't the first handheld PC device, but ever since the Steam Deck, more have been coming out. One that has caught my eye recently is the Asus ROG Ally. Some have labeled it as the Steam Deck killer, and the specs sure do look impressive for the price. For now though, I think I'll just stick with the deck.